Hello, my name is Jamari Tellis, and I am no longer choosing to be silent. For the past month, you may have or may have not seen me posting on my other social media accounts consistently about the topic of sexual assault. More specifically, the sexual assault of minors ranging from the ages of 14 to 17. I've made polls to get the opinions of others, posted news articles about it, and even given my own intel. For the last 31 days, I've gathered the courage to sit here and record this video. On the first day, I added the National Sexual Assault Hotline to my bio, and from then, preparing myself for this. I was groomed at the age 14 by my best friend's older brother, Quentin Downey. For those of you who are unaware of the definition of grooming is the process of building trust, a relationship, or an emotional connection with someone to manipulate, exploitate, and or abuse them. Grooming can happen to anyone, but it's more common in an adult-to-child relationship, which is what I found myself in. I would like to let this be known before I get too deep into this video. I am not filming this because of what happened to me. I'm filming this because it's more common than we think. Everything I'm going to mention in this video, the lies, the process of the grooming, his family members covering up his crimes, my family members' ignorance, the police not taking the matter seriously enough, are all of the problems that contributed to my abuse and why it lasted for so long. The reason he was able to and continues to get away with all of his disgusting crimes are all the things we should be aware of. This is why I'm making this video. For those of you who have kids, sisters, brothers, cousins, friends, or family members, anyone who is close to you, I want to be able to give you enough information to be able to recognize these signs. Grooming is done so smoothly, you could be unaware of it. If any of this resonates with you or someone you know, I'm hoping this can help. For anyone who has ever experienced what I am about to tell you, I want to start off by saying it is not your fault, and you can go through this. I've decided to tell my story for that exact reason. Saying it won't change my past, but I'm hoping it can help somebody's future. This subject is still hard to talk about, but I will no longer let him and his family silence me. Between the story, I will implement evidence, screenshots, debates on the subject, and everything I had to do to show the severity of his crimes. For any of you who has experienced this or know someone who has, and this is too hard to hear, I advise you to turn off your advice and start your healing. This is not the video for you. I appreciate the view and I wish anyone who has decided to leave the best. I've made an Instagram account that is a safe place for anyone who would like to reach out and talk about their experiences. I would love to support anyone who has nowhere else to go. You have me. I am here for you. With that being said, let's talk about it. It all started June 2019. I was 14 years old and I had just graduated 8th grade. My best friends at the time had invited me to the graduation party, so of course I went, and that is where I saw him. I didn't use the word met because I had met him prior before this and was not very fond of him. He had hurt someone very close to me, and even though I had known this, that did not stop me from becoming a victim. Quentin knew that I didn't like him for what he did. He drunkenly apologized to me for what he did to this person. I told him I'm not the person he should be apologizing to, and he should tell them. He then proceeded to tell me that he has apologized for it, but only while he was drunk. I ended up giving him a talk about how being unable to soberly express his apology makes his apology pointless. We spent the rest of the night talking about how he should go about it, and that was all. It wasn't until the day after that things had changed from communicational interactions to physical interactions. We ended up having the same talk, and again, he was intoxicated, but he ended up hugging me and thanking me. I was glad. I felt like I fixed him and my close friend's relationship and also gained a friend. A cute friend. Who was older. Before he went to sleep, I guess Quentin had remembered that we had each other on Snapchat, and he texted me and asked if I could meet him in the laundry room so he can give me one last hug and a thank you. I had thought nothing of it besides a cute boy wants to hug me. I did not think he wanted me, I did not think he would pursue me, and I did not think he would groom me. I spent pretty much the whole summer at my friend's house, and he had been there a lot too. We went from flipping each other off every single time we saw each other to staying up all night talking in his grandma's kitchen about his crush, my crush, and my dad, who had recently become abusive because of a traumatic brain injury. Hence the reason why I was at my best friend's house all the time. The talks went to play fighting, and play fighting went to sticking wet peppermints onto each other's body parts. That little game is what started the more intense physical interactions. I had felt bold enough to stick a wet peppermint from my mouth onto his neck. Most of you guys will see this as me making the first move, but I need you to keep in mind that I was 14. He was 18. I have never been with or done any of this before with anyone else. That is what grooming looks like. Groomers are not obvious creeps. They are not that one dude at the store that you can tell is a neighborhood pedo. They look like you, me, your sister, your brother, aunt or uncle. They look like normal, decent human beings. That is how they groom. From then, me and Quentin had started flirting. Eventually, Quentin told me he had developed feelings for me and thought we should stop talking because of it. He had mentioned his previous crimes before that involved a minor and why he was on probation, and told me he was no longer that person, but he had never had anyone care or love him the way that I did. He had mentioned his previous crime that involved a minor and why he was on probation, and explained to me that he was no longer this person, but because of the love and care I had showed him, he had accidentally caught feelings. This had made 14-year-old me feel so special. I told him that I did not want to lose my friendship with him, and that he didn't have to worry because I didn't feel anything back, so nothing would happen. He was fine with it. Eventually, we became more physical. The hugs turned into kisses, and the texts turned into overnight calls. I eventually started liking him, but we both agreed to keep it at a friends with benefits level. We ended up coming up with a hand signal that would let each other know when we wanted to mess around without telling each other we wanted to mess around. We ended up finding out it was a gang sign. In October 2019, I had told Quentin I loved him. He said he loved me too. I had built us a nice picnic at the park we used to walk to. I'm telling you all this to show you that I loved him. I'm not some random girl trying to bring someone down. He was my first relationship, my first love, and the first and only person I've ever been sexually active with. Quentin never officially made me his girlfriend. He would always tell me that he wanted to be with me, but only when he could post me and step out with me without getting in trouble. He said we were going to wait until I was 18, and until then, it would just be us. I used to be okay with that. It started off nice. He used to take me on walks, show me things in his room. We would cuddle and watch movies. He used to buy me food, and the first time I ever tried Jamba Juice was with him. Things were always sexual, but once he took my virginity, that's pretty much all we did. It's hard trying to figure out if I actually wanted to be always sexually active with him, or if it was because he wanted to always be active with me. Thinking back on a lot of the things he said, it makes me feel like he purposely let me down the path of having sex with him. When I was 14, I told him I wanted to wait till marriage. He said okay. I then changed my answer to 18. He said that was okay. Eventually it happened. He took my virginity 2 months after I told him I loved him, on December 4th, 2019. A year later, I was at his house and we were cuddling and talking about us. I ended up telling him that I thought it was funny how I used to think we were going to wait till marriage and then it ended up happening, and he said he already knew it would, and he just wanted me to think that he didn't. That didn't sit right with me. Quentin basically admitted to not genuinely caring or wanting to respect my wishes to preserve my virginity. He was older. He had the power, and he knew this. I was so manipulated by him that even after fights, I would end up sleeping with him. I did not want him to leave, and a part of me always knew that he only wanted what was between my knees. Ha. Quentin was never faithful, and his inability to be is what started our physical fight. Before me and Quentin made things unofficially official, I'd found out he was still talking to the girl he used to talk to me about when we were just friends. I didn't want to be with him if he was unsure of his feelings about another woman, so I told him it was okay to like who you liked, but we couldn't continue if he still had feelings for her. He told me he didn't. Clearly that was a lie. It was around Valentine's Day when I found out he was still talking to her. I knew they were still friends, and I was okay with that. They had been friends since they were children, and I didn't want to ruin a friendship because of an old crush, but something told me there was more going on. I tried to talk to him about it, which led to an argument. I ended up asking to see his phone, which he allowed me to do. I saw them flirting, I got upset and wouldn't give his phone back, so that's when he snatched it from me. I pushed him away and tried to leave, and that's when he grabbed me, and the fight started. I do not remember most of our fights. I remember he's choked me, he's slapped me, he's hit me, and I didn't remember until he recently told me, but he has also headbutted me before. The last fight we got into was before he left to Colorado. He had choked me, and I thought I was going to die. This is not the first time I thought I was going to die with him. Quentin had tried to slit my throat before when we were high off acid. It was a joke, but it still scared me, and I pushed his hand away, and he ended up slitting my thumb. The first time Quentin has ever raped me outside of statutory rape was when I was 16 years old. I had just gotten out of the mental hospital and made it clear to him that we should only be friends because of my mental health. I even told him about the guy I kissed in there. When I got out, my best friend didn't want to be friends anymore. We had lost our house, so me and my mom and my siblings had to leave with my grandma, who was bipolar, so you never knew when it was going to be a good or a bad day. Me and my sister were still not on good terms, and I was severely depressed. I started abusing weed every day throughout that summer. When I had none, I would call Quentin, because he knew how to get some. Not only that, but he knew how to get alcohol. Pretty much every Friday we were drinking together. The first time we had ever drunk together, I had let him know that I did not want to have sex with him. Even if I got drunk and decided that I wanted to, I still wanted him not to have sex with me. I said this sober. He did not respect this. He fingered me in the movie theaters, and then we went home, and before he could sleep with me, I fell asleep. That did not stop him. I only remember bits and pieces of that night, but what really stuck to me was waking up during my sexual assault and feeling my body flop around. I ended up going back to sleep. I woke up the next morning and my pants were off, so I knew it had happened. I woke Quentin up and I asked him if we slept together. He told me yes. I asked him while I was asleep, because I remembered going to sleep. He told me yes. I asked him why would he do that, and he said was I not supposed to. I felt gross. I felt disgusting. and I was hurt. The next day, it dropped me off like nothing happened. I didn't want to go home. I didn't feel like that was my home. I felt alone, and my home life honestly was not the greatest. Living in an unhealthy and toxic living conditions are one of the main reasons why a child or an adult can end up being groomed. My father's brain injury had made him physically and verbally abusive. Before that, my parents' relationship was never stable. There was always arguing, and my dad was in and out of my life. I had no one else to go to when I started feeling like I was in an abusive relationship because his sister was my best friend and I was never close to my family. When my family had first had an idea that I was seeing an older man, they blamed me. They shamed me and they made me feel like I was gross. None of those reactions helped. Everyone in his family knew me and Quentin were together. The only person who told my mom was my best friend's mom. I convinced my mom she was lying by falsifying information about his crimes so that she would believe me. My mother didn't want to believe her because instead of looking at the situation as an 18-year-old taking advantage of her 14-year-old daughter, she was looking at it as most of you probably will. A 14-year-old, a fast little girl trying to be with older men. That was not the case. I was not an ambitious young slut. I was a child that Quentin took advantage of. I had never been with anyone else besides him. I've never done anything sexual with anyone else besides him. Anything sexual that I was taught or did was learnt from him. That all happened January 2020. I was off the hook for the next 7 months until it was my best friend's 15th birthday. We were all supposed to go to a hotel and celebrate. By all I mean her, me, her sisters, Quentin and his older friends, except her mom had found out about the boys going and canceled the plans. I ended up going back to Quentin's house, and the next day I was caught while having sex with him in his sister's room by his mom. He held the door as I hopped out the window. We lived in the same neighborhood, so while I was walking home, his mom was getting in her car to come face me. She pulled up by the sidewalk and started recording me, which was pointless because she knew she couldn't post it, because then she would be exposing her son for being with me, again, the minor. She called me out my name, got back in her car, and continued to follow me as I was walking. I ended up telling her, I don't know why you're recording me, you're only finna get your son in trouble. To which she responded to, recording you? Nobody's recording you. Stay the F-U-C-K away from my house. She got in her car and skirted off. I returned home, and that night I had told my mom about Quentin. My sister had found pictures of us and she told my mom, so she confronted me about it. She took me to the car and I told her everything. We had a talk, and after I went back in my house, went in my room. I was so excited I called Quentin and told him I had told my mom everything and that she was okay with it. She was not. Turns out my mom already knew about it because of my sister and my friend's mom. She had told my grandma and my aunt about it. My mom, my sister, and my aunt all came up with a plan to take away my phone, and apparently me too. Their plan was to get him in trouble. This did not happen. The next morning, my aunt came in, took my phone, went through my drawers, and found the lingerie I had sent to Quentin. These are the pictures my sister had saw, and that's how she knew I had them. I was yelled at, and they told me they were going to report him. I cried and said that I loved him and that he loved me too, and I begged them not to. And if they didn't, I would tell them everything. I didn't. My mom had made me go with my aunt to Stockton where she lived, and she had my phone, so every single time she found out I was lying, she would hit me. I was pretty much beat for everything. She had taken away any and all access I could have possibly had to contact Quentin except for my school computer. I was 14 when I stopped going to school. This was before COVID. It started because of what was going on at home, and my relationship with Quentin had heavily contributed to it too. He was an adult. He had a job, and outside of that, nothing else to do except for me. He did that a lot. Point is, I was with him most of the time. My mom ended up putting me on independent studies because of how frequently I was missing school, which means to her knowledge, I could be at my friend's house on weekdays as long as I had my computer. I took my computer with me every single time I went to Quentin's house. I did none of my work. I had emailed him and my best friend. I asked my best friend to log into my Snapchat account and change my Gmail so that they wouldn't be able to find anything else and use it against him or me. I emailed him and I love you and I'm doing everything to keep you safe. Don't worry about me. I spent the next 2 weeks on my aunt's. I didn't eat, I hardly slept, and I was depressed. I had a conversation with my grandpa that made a lot of sense. He had told me when he was 19 he lived across the street from this mom and her 14-year-old daughter. He knew that both of them liked him, and he knew that he could have the 14-year-old if he wanted to. He didn't. He knew how it would have affected her. He knew that it wasn't okay, and he told me that Quentin did not love me, and eventually I would see that. I do. I see that now. I wanted to die. And even though he had hurt me, he also kept me alive. And he left me. I knew I couldn't get him back, so I had faked messages between me and my mom and told him that I had told her that he raped me. I sent those screenshots to him. He then told all of his friends and family that I was lying and they called me out for it. I apologized to Quentin for lying about telling my mom and begged him to see me again. He did. We planned on drinking and I again asked him not to hook up with me. He did. Again. I felt dumb and I hated myself. The next morning I took 7 of his promethazine pills and hoped to pass away. I did not. He spent the night with me as I was twitching and unable to fall asleep. It was miserable. He was all I had, but he had done that to me. I was 14. I stopped going to school and I was with him pretty much all of the time. I stopped talking to my friends. I started drinking, smoking, cutting, and isolating myself from everyone, and he encouraged it. He didn't tell me to do my homework, and he complained when I spent too much time away from him, but would tell me that his world didn't revolve around me. Being abused for being with Quentin did not stop me from wanting him. It actually made it worse, for I felt like he was truly the only person I had. The abuse from my dad had triggered me to be vulnerable enough for him in the first place, so more of that did not help. Most things between me and Quentin are a blur, but I spent pretty much every day with him, except for that one day out of the week where I had to go to school, or when he would go with his friends. But even sometimes I would go with them, or I would just wait for him to come back home. Even after many fights, I never went home. I didn't have a home. He was my home. He gave me everything I was used to: abuse, neglect. He down talked me and ridiculed me. And then he also gave me everything I wasn't used to: love, care, attention, hugs. That is why I never left. Quentin had told me about all the ways he has hurt other girls before. He had felt comfortable enough because even though I judged him, I still loved him. He knew he could tell me anything because I wouldn't tell him what he wanted to hear, but I would hold him while doing so. Confessing to me was his way of getting rid of all his guilt. I used to think it was because he was actually sorry and that he wanted to change. But how could that be when he was still doing all those bad things with me? Quentin has once asked me if I thought he was a monster. Me, the girl that he knew had left him. I told him no. He asked me because he knew I would tell him no, and he just wanted to clear his guilty conscience. He knew what he was, and he wanted me, the girl that would do everything for him, to make him feel better about himself for the disgusting things he did to me and other girls. Other little girls. I'm not here trying to throw dirt on his name. I'm trying to let others be aware of these signs, and his family loves to cover up his crimes. I found out that Quentin had told everyone I lied about him raping me by going through his phone. He was asleep, and I had a feeling he had did so because when I told my best friend, well, ex-best friend at this time, his sister, about it, she said she did not believe me. I saw that she had texted him and asked if this was true, and he told her that I was lying and making things up because he wouldn't let me hang out with him. When I saw that, I screenshotted the messages of him apologizing to me for raping me and admitting to it and sent it to her. She responded with an "I do not care." I was hurt. I woke him up, I yelled at him, and then I left. On my way home, his grandma had called me and asked if that was true. It was her birthday. I told her yes, and she said we could all go out to pizza and talk about it. That did not happen. After we had got off the phone, his Aunt Tiffany had called me and asked me if Quentin had hurt me. I said, "Did he rape me?" And she said yes. I said yes. She then proceeded to ask me if I told my mom, and I told her no. I had no intentions on telling my mom. She then said good and asked me not to because he just needs help, and she would get him help, but she can't get him help if he's in prison. That hurt my feelings. I knew that was coming. She said when she flied back from Colorado, she would take me out to dinner and we'd talk about it. That never happened. I went home that day and came back that night. 2 days later, his probation had came and seen me hiding in his backyard. I ran so he wouldn't get caught, except they found my credit card in his room. They ran my name and ended up finding out who I was. They even texted me from his phone. I knew it was them that were texting me, so I pretended as if like I thought they were talking about the alcohol bottle that they felt in his room because of the fact that Quentin was 20 years old and on probation, so he wasn't supposed to be drinking or smoking or any of that sort. That didn't work. I decided to go back to his house, but I had a plan. I was going to tell them that I was my sister since she was turning 18. Turns out that Quentin had already told them that I was her. They ran her name, and since we both looked the same and I was there in front of them, they decided that they were going to take a picture of me and send it to my mom and have her confirm it. She did. She said I was not her. They took me down to the station and I had given a false statement, which is probably why a year later he was let off of probation. I try not to think about it too much because after that happened, I was sent to foster care and he got to go to Hawaii. 2 months later, I ran away from the system and I stayed with Quentin. While I was gone, we lived at his friend's house for 2 months. I tried acid for the first time and was high all day, every day off weed. Eventually, we had to leave, so we went back to his mom's house. I don't know how or when, but they ended up finding out that I was there. His aunt had pulled up and demanded to see him. He told me to go outside the window while he opened the door to talk to her, and that's what happened. The only problem was his mom was outside in the backyard, so she ended up seeing me. I climbed outside of the window and Quentin pushed Tiffany outside of his room. They were banging on the door and eventually they broke in. I tried to talk to Tiffany, but she wasn't having it. She was yelling and screaming at me, and eventually his mom called me the hard R B word. I ended up fighting It was an instant response. I was beyond hurt because she was my best friend's mother, and I did not think she would do that to me. His sister tried to stab me while their mom and were ganging up on me. His grandma was there, so she called the police. I was sent back to foster care, and that was the last time I interacted with all of them, except for Quentin. They took me back to the facility, and I left, and eventually I was back with Quentin. On Thanksgiving, I decided to go back home. I reconnected with my family, and eventually foster care let me be back with my mom. July 2022 was the month that I fully understood that what Quentin did to me was so wrong. I was/am 17, and I went to a young life camp and was finally around people my age for the first time in 3.5 years. A 14-year-old boy there who was very handsome tried to get at me, but he was a baby. I saw that and I felt no attraction. I felt no reason to play into his crush because he was a child. I didn't and couldn't see how anyone else could, and that's what made everything click. Quentin had already left to Colorado by then, so it made things so much easier. Every now and then when I would get depressed, I would hit him up because that's what I was used to. Our relationship was built off of my sadness. Quentin had given me the right amount of attention at the wrong time. The last time I saw him was when he flew back to Cali for a family vacation. Quentin had already apologized for raping me, but I wanted to know so much more. I wanted to know why he did it, why he dated me while being on probation after being with a minor, why he molested so many girls, why he lied about not knowing what he was doing, why he felt like it was okay to be with me, and most importantly, why did he believe that nothing was his fault? He told me everything. Quentin had tried to make excuses, but I already knew everything. He eventually just ended up putting his head down and agreeing. Quentin's first victims was family. I think I was the only girl outside of his family members that he had touched. The only reason why I got close to him in the first place was to try to help and fix his and my close friend's relationship. I guess you could say it worked because they're close now and here I am. Despite how embarrassing it is to admit all of these things, I know it is for the best. If I could help at least one little boy or one little girl realize that they're in an unhealthy and unsafe position, I have done my job. If I could help at least one mom or dad be able to understand how to help their child who is in this position, then I have done what needed to be done. If I could help one person with a friend who is going through this, then I have done what I wanted to do. The biggest advice I can give to others to help people in this position is to talk to that person you may feel is a victim. Do not shame, do not judge, and always let them know that your hand is open for help if they ever need it. 9 times out of 10, if you were to tell a person that they are being groomed, they will not believe you. This does not mean that you aren't helping. Being able to be supportive and a shoulder to cry on if they need it will. So much goes on in these toxic relationships that eventually they will see that it is not okay. If everyone around the victim makes them feel like they are the problem, they will have no one else to go to but the actual problem. My second word of advice is report it. Even if it makes them mad, even if it makes them hate you, even if it makes them not want to talk to you again, report it. Report it to a parent, police, teacher, therapist, administrative advisor, anyone you think who could do something about it. Tell them. In the long run, it will help the person in danger and anyone the groomer has or could end up hurting. To my fellow victims and survivors, we will no longer allow ourselves to be treated like the offender. I am taking back my power, and with that, choosing to fight for the right to be heard. We will not allow our offenders, our offenders' families, the police, or anyone else who does not take this matter seriously enough to wash it down the drain. The pain and the loneliness that comes with being used and abused is something that you can never take back. I was 14. I'm not trying to revoke anything that I consented to with Quentin because I was a child. I was unable to consent to anything. No matter how old you are, if you ended up having a child, marrying, or somehow building a healthy relationship with your groomer, you were a child. You did not deserve to be taken advantage of. I am glad I was his next victim because there will be no more after me. I am strong, you are strong, and we can and will get through this. I would like to mention my Instagram account that I have created again at @JamSafePlace. If you would like to click over to that and tell your story privately and safely, you are more than welcome to. Thank you so much for watching my video, and Happy New Year's.
When you didn't ask me if you were a monster, me, the little girl you groomed, the little girl who said that she loved you, when you asked me if I thought you were a monster, that wasn't you trying to justify your own actions. That wasn't you looking back and be like, damn, I'm doing this shit again. That wasn't you doing that. And this isn't a simple mistake, Quentin. You fucking with little girls fucking their minds up. It's not a mistake. It's not, oh, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know it was wrong. You don't get to just say that. You didn't drop a dish on the floor and nobody's yelling at you and piling up on you. I'm shit that they probably did that to you when you were younger, and that's why you guys are so fucked up. But I'm not doing that now. I'm not making it seem like you dropped a glass and I'm like, Quentin, you keep dropping glasses. What the fuck is wrong with you? No, you keep fucking with little girls. What the fuck is wrong with you? That's an issue.
Why you keep saying that?
Because, so I wasn't a little girl, Quentin. I wasn't a little girl. Janae, when she was 17, and how old were you? Probably 20. She wasn't a little girl. I don't care if it's a 3-year-old difference. She was 17. She was under the age of 18.
I didn't even know she was. She told me she wasn't.
How are you going to believe someone the same age as your little sister?
I don't know, bro. You gonna tell me something? I'm gonna believe.
Okay, well, you knew how old I was, though. So what's your excuse then? You knew how old I was. You knew I was 14.
Okay.
You knew I just graduated 8th grade. So what was?
You're 15. You're 16. No, you're 17.
So and you knew I was 14.
Yeah, that's what I said.
And you got with me.
Yeah.
And you fucked me.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And then 15.
Yeah, that's what I said that. And 16.
Mm-hmm.
And 17.
Mm-hmm.
And now 17.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you didn't know that was wrong.
No, I didn't know it was wrong, but I didn't know it was wrong between us. Because I don't know.
Why would it not be wrong between us, Quentin? Us
know.
getting in a relationship, you going after me in the first place was wrong. It was wrong as fuck. Because the only reason why I started talking to you was because I wanted you and Linnea to be close again. She would text me about you being depressed or different type of shit like this. And you tell me you don't remember. But when I was 12, I used to text you consistently, probably like every fucking day, trying to make sure you weren't going to off yourself. That's how I got involved in the first place. Because I knew how to help Linnea and she thought I could help you. And I thought I could too. And I didn't. I thought I was, but I guess the only thing I was doing was preventing another little girl outside of me for the next 3 years getting hurt by you. Because that shit doesn't go away. Once you have attraction to little girls, you have an attraction to little girls. So you might be like this for the rest of your life. And to be honest, that sucks. And it's sad. But that's not my problem.
I didn't say it was ever your problem.
I just think it's crazy how you don't feel like everything is your fault. By the fact that I feel like I was groomed and manipulated and taken advantage of. I don't see how you don't think that's your fault at all.
So to tell you the truth, I do. And it's just a hard thing to say. It's a hard thing to swallow.
To admit?
To comprehend, yeah. To admit.